Welcome back to another episode of What's New in Beauty. My name is Nia Lee, and I'm super excited to have you guys here. If it's your first time tuning in, this is essentially the beauty podcast where I love talking about all the latest news and insights happening in the beauty industry, and of course, provide my 2 cents to it, and of course, my little social media marketing insights and moves, and to get into everything. Now, I am super duper excited for this news because when it came across my timeline, I honestly screamed because I love these 2 brands, I love these founders, and to me, it just spoke so much life into what the kind of climate of beauty is and how if you're a brand that has quote unquote been playing it safe or has trying to figure out how to evolve and how to innovate, then this is how you get it done. And it's all about the news of Bread Beauty Supply being acquired by the holding company, Cost of Doing Business, led by Topicals founder Olamide and their president Sochi. And this is actually really exciting news. And I actually want to read this off of essence.com. And it's saying textured hair care brand Bread Beauty Supply has found a new home with Cost of Doing Business, the brand's new holding company founded by Topicals CEO Olamide and President Sochi, who are also now Bread's new strategic advisors, from Topicals' clever brand fills to Bread's cheeky branding, essentially like their trademark, which is all about their scalp massager. Their scalp I can't say massager. Their scalp massager. And of course, this acquisition honestly just makes total sense. And this is what Essence is saying. And to me, it also makes sense as well because Bread and Topicals kind of came in at a time when I felt like the beauty industry was definitely not championing a lot of more indie brands, particularly indie brands that were founded by Black-owned businesses. And obviously, post-2020, even during 2020, we obviously saw an influx of a ton of Black-owned brands and even specifically Black-owned women brands that were able to, amass a lot of success. But since then, it's really interesting to see the brands that have still been able to keep that momentum, have eyes on them, people be super excited about what it is that they're building. And so to me, this essentially acquiring of Bread to honestly elevate it, and I follow Bread and I follow Topicals. So when I saw that Bread kind of wiped their feed, they had a new kind of moodier look, I was like, oh, like what's going on? Like something's happening. And so when I saw that, and then I obviously saw the news and heard the news and started reading up about it, I was like, oh, this is like a really interesting move. And actually something really interesting before I get into the article fully, I was watching a live that Olamide did talking about the acquisition of Bread and giving her insights. And she's super dope. Like she's very focused, very driven, very smart. And she was talking about how what she was able to build and what their team was able to build with Topicals and how they were able to, essentially run the play. And she's heavily into sports and loves sports and did track and the whole nine. So she talks about running the play a lot because that's something that's really heavy in sports. And she was like, I think we can run this play with Bread. And she talked about how she has loved Bread. She has also loved the, of course, founder of Bread, Maesa, who is incredible. And again, to me, I think it's just a smart move altogether because, again, we hear so many things about brands being acquired, essentially a lot by private equity or like other corporations or other, big conglomerates that are out there. And what we always see, and I've talked about a lot of, acquisitions and certain things like that on this podcast. So it's definitely not a new topic, but something that I think is really interesting and very poignant that we need to really get into is the fact that this is a Black woman-owned holding company, who's also helming probably one of the most influential beauty brands out there currently right now that's heavily steeped in Black culture and streetwear and fashion and all the things that are innovative, on top of the fact of selling, of course, beauty products for essentially, skincare flare-ups and things that people don't necessarily always want to talk about when it comes to skincare and beauty. But here you have them saying, we see what Bread has been able to do over the years and how they've been able to essentially carve out this niche of kind of, and something really interesting that I really want to get into super quick is that particularly when it comes to natural hair, curly hair, all that stuff, I don't want to say the play or the playbook or whatever has kind of been outdated, but all kind of the natural hair care brands or quote unquote curly hair brands all kind of follow a same kind of look, feel, essence to it. And I'm not sitting here and saying that they're quote unquote dated, but I just think everybody's following the same blueprint. What I really appreciated about Bread off rip was that they did not follow that blueprint. Like they said, we want to be a brand that's cool and cute and innovative, and we want to showcase different hair textures, and we want to showcase different people. And it's not just about always being so polished and put together, which I find a lot of the natural hair care brands or the curly, quote unquote, curly hair brands sometimes are very keen on. And I wouldn't even sit here and say that Bread is only about, specifically a particular type of hair type, but they obviously have a focus about who it is that their ideal audience and community member is. And so for me, I just noticed right off the bat that they were doing things differently. And then that kind of lends to Topicals also doing things differently in the beauty industry and how they approach skincare, specifically skincare for flare-ups. So going back to the Essence article, essentially, this is what they are quoting. Typically, when a Black-owned business gets acquired, so this is what I was essentially talking about, so many things are changed and altered in a way that isn't serving our community. And this is what Olamide tells Essence. And so she continues and says that's why Bread founder Maesa being acquired by another Black business is the point. They understand what it takes to build a generational defining brand in this market. And I can't wait to see where they want to take the brand. That was a quote from Maesa. Essentially remaining the brand's chief creative officer, which again, always really interesting, right? Because in this kind of essence, you would think that, okay, Maesa would maybe stay on as CEO or whatnot. No, like cost of doing business, Olamide, Sochi, they are really coming in and being these strategic advisors. So much so that now Maesa gets to kind of take I wouldn't even necessarily say a step back, because again, like this is still her baby in a sense, but now her becoming like a chief creative officer, which typically this always happens as well too. Like if you guys are paying attention and really seeing how the beauty industry runs, like a lot of these beauty brands that are, what they are, if you always look at the founder, they're usually not necessarily always the CEO, or they're the CEO for a certain period of time until they then can hire a more qualified CEO or a qualified, CMO or CFO or whomever it is that they need to take their brand to the next level. And then that founder sometimes will step back and, and essentially position themselves in a role that's really specific on creative. So you'll see, of course, chief creative officers, you'll see creative directors, you'll see, again, founders, like that'll still kind of be in the realm. But I thought that was actually really interesting as well, too, because so many people would probably think, she would still be doing the day-to-day of everything. But no, that's what this new essence of bringing in these strategic advisors who are really good at what it is that they do. And now Maesa herself, who in a sense will always, in a sense, be a founder of Bread Beauty Supply. That's her baby. That was her idea. But now, she gets the opportunity to not necessarily worry about the quote unquote day-to-day of actually running the business, but instead actually be the chief creative officer who is worried, and not even necessarily worried, but who is now in charge of creative and working in tandem with the president of Topicals, as well as the CEO and founder of Topicals, who are also in this space of creative. And quickly just going back to the live Olamide did, she talked about how, of course, she's the founder of the company, but her decision to wanting to hire a president and really wanting the president to handle the business side of things. So then she was able to actually now focus on the creative and the marketing and all the stuff that, like, again, she's either really interested in or the things that she's really great in. So that, two things. And that's why I always think it's really like important, especially when you're wanting to scale or wanting to do bigger things with your business and your brand, that, I understand the appeal of wanting to be everything to everybody, but you need to hire people that are smarter than you, and you need to hire people that are actually going to help you make the business run. Because I find a lot of the times a lot of founders get stuck in like the marketing and the creative and all these things that I think are really, of course, very important to a brand being successful. But if your business isn't making money on a consistent basis and you haven't figured out how to actually scale the business, then you don't really have a business. You just have a very expensive hobby. So the truth of the matter is hire people smarter than you and hire people who actually have the business acumen to take your business to the next level so that you can focus on the things that are in your zone of genius and the things that you're really good at. So I really just wanted to get into that because I think that's really, really exciting. Again, that she is still being the chief creative officer of Bread. And something that I thought was really interesting that they speak to as well is that they mentioned that it takes a village to raise a child. And it's really the same thing with the business. So although Topicals and Cost of Doing Business will operate independently, Bread has already begun following in the skincare line's footsteps by launching their first ever brand film, which was really exciting because Topicals has been really great at these, mini short films, really kind of telling a story that is, again, the product is there and it's a focal, but it's not really, like, you're more hooked into the story. And so that's been really exciting to see. So that brand film was super dope. It featured Foggy Raw and his music as well, which was really cool. And again, this is things that Bread and Topicals I find have in common. Like, they're really good at being able to like figure out these cultural moments and finding really cool and innovative ways to bring everything together. And whether it's through music, whether it's through fashion, whether it's through film, they've been really strategic in being able to do this. And I love it. To me, I think it's super dope. And if anything, it's more of an indication how, the whole thing about Olamide talking about running the play with Topicals for Bread, I totally see that vision coming together. My only thing is, and I'll just say this because I'm definitely, although I'm excited and I'm happy for it, the other thing that's happening in my brain is that I hope Bread doesn't essentially lose its identity fully by kind of what Topicals has been able to put together. And I'm not sitting here and saying that they're going to be the exact same, but I will admit when I did see the short film, when I did kind of see the change, it did make me think of Topicals a lot. And so my whole thing is, now that they're acquiring this brand and obviously taking over the creative direction and the marketing and all these other efforts, I just hope we don't lose the essence of what Bread is. But I do want to again mention the live that Olamide did where she said that Bread is going to grow up a little bit. And so if anything, this is actually really exciting to see what that kind of version looks like, because again, we've never really seen a curly hair care brand really kind of be grown and sexy and elevated, because again, everybody's kind of following the exact same kind of blueprint where they are kind of playing it safe. You know what I mean? And Bread to me has never been a brand that's been playing it safe, just like Topicals hasn't been a brand that's played it safe. But I'll be really interested to see what that kind of grown up looks like. I hope they're able to carve their own specific identity that doesn't look very similar to Topicals in a sense. I mean, they are similar in sense of style and whatnot, but to me, Bread has always been kind of like this approachable, cute brand that to me has been very, exciting and very indie and very niche. And so I hope to really kind of dive in a little bit further and see, and also hopefully be able to try their products eventually when they decide to come to Canada and all that, because again, like I said, I've been following their journey. I've been seeing how everything has been coming together. And to me, I think it just makes the most sense. And again, just want to shout out to them and the team, Olamide, Sochi, Maesa. Like, I think this is a really historical moment for so many reasons, because again, going back to what I said, we see so many brands get acquired by conglomerates and by private equity that never understand the vision of these brands. And so it's really dope to see a Black woman, honestly, 3 Black women come together and do business and elevate and do things in a very innovative and dope way. And I love it. To me, I think it's just a smart move. I think everyone's super excited about it. Like I said, I'm excited to see Bread grown up. And I also wanted to speak to a little bit about just the specific point that was actually spoken about by Business of Fashion, which is essentially the financial terms of the deal were not disclosed, which I thought was really interesting, because again, Olamide talked about how much money she was able to raise for Topicals and how that's still not as much money as, again, what other brands are raising. And so who knows if that number will ever be disclosed in the future. But again, to me, if anything, I hope this allows more brands to understand that like things like this are totally possible. And I also think relationships in business are really important. And I also wanted to speak about this really, really quick, because I think a lot of the times like people love saying that business isn't personal. And I think they're lying when they say that, because look at the people who are doing business together, and it's most likely people who are friends, like there's some camaraderie, there's some community there. There is lots of meetings, there's lots of hangouts, people visiting each other, doing collaborations. And again, all of that is really business, but I don't think any of these people are doing business with people that they don't like. You know what I mean? I don't think on any point in time that Olamide and Sochi and Maesa are doing this business deal because it's oh, we're just going to do a business deal. No, these women are very much tapped into each other. They respect each other. There is love there. I am 1,000% sure amongst them all, as well as love for beauty and innovation and doing things differently. So for me, it's at the end of the day, people will sit there and say to the cows come home, oh, business isn't personal, business isn't personal. Most of those people that are saying that to you are the same people that are telling you that you just got to work hard and you'll get whatever you want. And we all know that's not necessarily true. It all comes down to who you know, who you have relationship with, who people like being around. Again, I can't do business with you if I don't even like being around you. That's really, you know what I mean? That's really what's currently happening. And so I find when people always are business isn't personal, business isn't personal, they sometimes say that so that they can act like they can be shisty in business. And of course, business is business and you're going to do what you need to do. But at the end of the day, people are doing deals and making moves with people that they want to build with and they want to do amazing things with. And yes, there's certain instances where we don't always have to put emotion into everything that we do. But at the end of the day, if I like you, if I love your if I love your vibe, if I'm inspired by you, if I want to hang with you, if I want to, again, do incredible collaborations with you or X, Y, and Z, then again, that all comes off of the back of us having some sort of shared camaraderie there. And that's a personal thing. So I wanted to speak to that as well too, because I thought it was super cute. In the live, Maesa was talking about how Olamide was wearing their OG bread sweater. And I thought that was so cute because again, she visited her because Olamide lives in London and, they're making moves over there in the UK. And so again, all this stuff is very personal. And I think it's more of an indication at the end of the day that relationships and who you know and who you meet and who you connect with could have the opportunity, to be bigger business moves down the line. I think if anything, if you approach business in a way that comes off very opportunistic or whatever, that sometimes can be a little bit icky. But at the end of the day, the truth of the matter is people do business with people that they enjoy and that they like and that they genuinely feel like we can have some great camaraderie with. So the people that are over there saying, oh, business isn't personal, those people I think are honestly full of shit. And I think those people would admit and sit there and say that, I got to know you or I got to like you or there's got to be something there in order for me to want to, take the call or, have the meeting with you or again, have an opportunity to acquire your whole brand that you made, you know what I mean? And still have you on, of course, as a CCO. So at the end of the day, congrats to all parties involved. Congrats to Bread. Congrats to Topicals, Olamide, Sochi, and Maesa. It's big business and it's big moves. It's the cost of doing business. I love it. I absolutely love it. Actually, now that we're talking about this, we're talking about acquisitions and we're talking about, founders and brands. I wanted to quickly also speak to Taraji P. Henson actually becoming one of the latest celebrity founders to buy back her brand, which is, of course, TPH by Taraji. So this was actually really interesting because I'm trying to remember if I remember that she sold the company or lost the company or something in relation to that. But the news came out that Taraji P. Henson bought back her TPH by Taraji brand from incubator Maesa. Financial terms on the deal were not disclosed, of course. And something that was really interesting about this, because I do remember potentially talking about this, how Maesa, they're an incubator company. They had a bunch of brands. There was some sort of issues that was happening with some of the brands as well too, getting payouts and certain things like that. I believe so. I could be wrong. I'll probably add an article into the show notes for some specific numbers or to highlight the specific brands. But I do remember there being some stuff happening with Maesa at the time. And I think I talked about it on the podcast, but I'm not 1,000% sure. But this news of her buying back her brand is actually really, really exciting. And again, I'm on the global cosmetic business site, and they're actually getting into this news even further. And they essentially said, according to the report published by WWD, Henson's moves chimes in a wider trend for founders to take back their control of their brand. Fellow Maesa stable Andrew Fitzsimmons purchased his haircare brand back last year. Okay, so there's clearly a trend here happening. And Maesa's chief growth officer told WWD, after launching and operating the brand for 5 successful years, we are thrilled to see Taraji take full ownership as it enters its next chapter of growth. The why, Henson told WWE in an emailed statement, over the past few months, I have been in discussions with my partners at Maesa regarding the future of TPH by Taraji brand, and I'm pleased to say that we have reached a mutually beneficial agreement that has afforded me the opportunity to buy back TPH, Henson said via email. From day one, our shared vision was to create a brand that celebrates hair and scalp with high-performance products rooted in self-care, efficiency, and inclusivity. And that's essentially the news there. And to me, I think it's great. I think at the end of the day, you know, even just recently, I believe the founder of Carol's Daughter also became the founder became the founder of the brand again. And if anything, I think this is more of an indication how much, celebrity founders or like the original founders of brands being at the helm of their brands has been really, really specifically key. And the reason why I say this, particularly where Black women or Black people are involved, is that we're in a very, especially in the States, especially in the US, it's a crucial time for a lot of brands, especially with the tariffs and everything happening. And so I think if anything, a lot of people are being very strategic about the moves that they're making. And I hope everything is, it sounds by this, Taraji and Maesa and everything, like everything's good. There's no drama, there's no issues and whatever, which I'm glad for, that it wasn't a big fight and there wasn't a bunch of stuff happening and there wasn't quote unquote shadiness happening, because again, when certain brands get sold or they get acquired or whatnot, sometimes things happen, right? I'm glad that things were mutually beneficial and everybody is getting what they want and Taraji's going to be at the helm, because if anything, I wouldn't be surprised if the brand kind of lost its allure and essentially lost a lot of its staying power because you don't necessarily have the celebrity or this founder at the helm. And I think, again, consumers are being so vocal about their experiences with brands and saying to themselves, like, listen, if this is TPH by Taraji and Taraji ain't here, or we're not seeing her the way that we want to, again, it kind of lets the consumers know that, there's potentially a lack of trust there. And sometimes as well, like I am purchasing this particularly, I'll maybe even speak to the Black consumer, like Black people were incredibly loyal. Like we purchase products, the stats have been out, I'm not going to get into them about us, quote unquote, purchasing a lot in beauty, whether it's hair, whether it's makeup, whether it's skincare, you name it. And so the truth of the matter is that Black people are buying things, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to buy products from founders and potentially from celebrities as well too, that they know, that they're aware of, that are also Black. Like there is a kindredness that is happening there, right? That's why even Black-owned businesses have been able to, I think, honestly been able to get certain success that they've been able to, is because you have Black women and also just Black people who support them to the umpteenth degree and will sit there and, will champion them. So sometimes when, the brands get sold or we find out about an acquisition, like I talked about this with the honey pot, people immediately are like, oh my God, the brand's going to change. Oh my God, it's not the same. Like, things end up always kind of happening in a way. And so I think I'm not 1,000% sure if there was any sort of, issues with any of the products. I've never really heard anybody kind of go off about the TPH products being, different or changed or whatnot. But I wouldn't be surprised that the brand doesn't have this essentially visibility and presence that it had once when Taraji was a part of the brand. And of course was the main reason as to why people are literally purchasing the products. I mean, literally the brand is named after her. So for me, congrats. For me, honestly, I love the move, because if anything, hopefully this puts Taraji in a space where she can really be at the helm of this company. And also potentially bring in CEOs, CMOs, CFOs, whomever it is that she needs on the team to take the brand to the next level. Because the truth of the matter is we are just living in a time now where consumers are super smart. They're also very vocal, and they will not support a brand if they feel like it's disingenuous or the products aren't the same, or simply the founder or whomever is just not at the helm of the brand anymore. So it kind of has lost its allure. And again, this is always an interesting thing as well too, too, when celebrity beauty brands will name the brand kind of very rooted in them. The brand is literally called TPH by Taraji. So it's like if Taraji's not there, we're kind of losing essentially the essence of the brand, literally. And so I wouldn't necessarily say always name a brand after yourself in a situation like that, because let's just say you do scale it and you do want to sell it. The brand definitely kind of, even like with Bobbi Brown, right? I've talked about this as well with her, and like obviously her not being a part of the company anymore, but it's her name. And so in a sense, some people still think that she still owns the brand and whatnot. And there was this whole like non-compete and whatnot about her not being able to start a new brand, within 10 years. And then of course she was able to start Jones Rhode, and that's been super successful. But in certain instances where, again, your name is very attached to the brand, it is a little bit difficult sometimes, especially if you, for whatever reason, don't plan to be the founder anymore. If you plan to sell it, things change and things are a little bit different. And so the truth of the matter is, I just also wouldn't be surprised at the end of the day if, they came to an agreement and said, it's better for us to have Taraji at the helm of this brand, especially because she is the namesake of the brand. So congrats to Miss Taraji. Congrats to TPH and Maesa and the agreement and everything being mutually beneficial, because again, like I said, I had heard a little bit of rumblings that Maesa had been going through some issues with some of their incubator brands as well too. And so I am really excited to see what the new evolution and the growth for TPH by Taraji and how they're able to, bring Taraji back into it and really allow her to take the helm of the brand. And I also wanted to speak to, because we're talking about, again, we're continuing. This is just the podcast episode of beauty moves and marketing moves and big moves. I'd seen this come across my timeline and I actually fell out the floor. And I'm going to try my best, y'all, not to talk about Miss Hailey Bieber every episode. But every time I'm like, I'm not going to talk about Rhode. I'm not going to bring them up. Something happens where I have to talk about them. And it's all about BOF, Business of Fashion, reporting that Miss Hailey Bieber is exploring the sale of her beauty brand Rhode. And this is crazy because this is off of the back of me finding out that they're going to be launching eye patches and they're going to be launching into Sephora this year. And it'll also be really interesting because I know Miss Hailey Bieber is not the CEO of Rhode. There is a very capable woman who is running essentially the day-to-day business of Rhode, and she's the founder and the creative director. Miss Hailey is the founder and the creative director of the brand. And so she's obviously a major selling point of the brand. But I also think it's interesting because at the end of the day, again, going back to the celebrity beauty brand element, right? That I was literally just talking about how like, if Hailey is not a part of the brand anymore or is not a focus of it, does the brand lose its allure? You know what I mean? Like, regardless of the celebrity collaborations, the influencer collaborations that they've done, X, Y, and Z, the fact that they're able to platform certain prominent models and pop stars and whatever in their campaigns, people still really love this brand because of Hailey Bieber. So Business of Fashion speaks to this, talking about her exploring the sale of her makeup brand, which very interesting, y'all, that they're referring to themselves as a makeup brand and not just a beauty or a skincare brand. Her makeup brand Rhode, that could be worth more than $1 billion, according to 3 people familiar with the matter. Bieber has tapped investment bankers at JP Morgan, Chase, and Moelis to find a buyer for the cosmetic brand that she launched in 2022. 2 of the sources said requesting anonymity as the matter is confidential. Bieber joins a list of celebrities who have recently accepted and attempted to cash in on popularity of consumer-focused ventures they launched in essentially a recent years, which is really interesting because I talked about this a few months ago, or maybe 6 months ago now, about Miss Selena, who was exploring potentially the sale of Rare Beauty. And I've talked about this again in the past about, the contention between the two. And, they're both founders of quite prominent beauty brands. But I think at the end of the day, if this potentially happens, does the allure of Rhode go away? Because I think, especially with a brand like Rhode, which the brand, what I've realized also about the brand is that they're really about aesthetics, and that's kind of it. Like, the products themselves are not overly revolutionary. There's no like tech element. There's no, crazy innovation. Like, they're coming out with kind of the same products that a lot of brands are coming out with, in which, hey, that's what we're doing. But I think what's really interesting at the end of the day is if she sells the brand, and most likely will probably still stay on as some sort of a creative director, or will just kind of be the founder of the brand and whatnot. I think if anything, she probably is saying to herself, like, I need to find a way to still kind of be in this, because again, if I'm not, the brand kind of loses its sauce, because again, so many people love the brand because of her. And so to me, I also think it's a little bit early. Like, it's only been 3 years. Like, I'm kind of shocked. Like, I'm actually quite shocked. But at the end of the day, if that's in the cards for her, I mean, kudos to her and her team. I think the brand has been able to do really well. And I talked about this, I believe last episode, which the brand was able to make $90 million in 2 months. I think that's, again, very impressive. And I also think at the end of the day, a lot of these celebrity beauty brands can be valued way more than what it is. I mean, $1 billion is kind of crazy, but I wouldn't be surprised, that she probably says to herself, we had a good run. We did what we needed to do. I'll probably still stay on as a founder or some sort of creative chief officer, kind of similar in the essence of Bread and Topicals and Maesa and Olamide and whatnot. But I think if anything, does the brand survive? I don't know, because I just see it happen so often. I see it happen so often where the helm of certain beauty brands who were started by very passionate founders or had very, keen celebrity element to it. And when they kind of left, the brand kind of lost its essence. And I actually wanted to speak to that quickly because I follow this really dope account. If you guys do not follow this account, you have to follow this account. It's called People, Brands, and Things. And I don't even know how I came across it. I think I was creeping on Summer Friday's stories, and I think, or maybe the founder of Summer Fridays, Mariana, I think I was creeping on her stories, one of them. But I saw that she had reposted this, and I was like, oh, what is this? And it's essentially an entire account that's dedicated to all the new launches and marketing, quote unquote moves, and who tapped who and what was the collaboration of prominent celebs, brands, influencers, you name it. And something that I thought was really, really interesting was that in the last 3 or 4 weeks or so, Merit has tapped Brenda Song to do a 5-minute beauty routine, which that's kind of their ongoing series that they've done. They also, not Merit, but OGX tapped Shay Mitchell as their global brand ambassador and did a fun series with her there. And Charlotte Tilbury tapped Kim Cattrell to be the face of their campaign for their new Pillow Talk Soulmates collection. And I thought this was really, really interesting because we talk about the death of the celebrity, right? Everyone's talking about the death of the celebrity. Everybody's talking about how celebrities are dead. Influencers are the cool kids. Content creators are the cool kids. Actually, now they're saying influencers are out and it's all about CEOs and content creators, right? And, the algorithm and everyone's going crazy and everyone's trying to figure out where they fit. What I thought was really interesting was that beauty has always been about the celebrity beauty ambassador or the global ambassador or whomever we need to tap in the campaign in order to make it what it is. And I've always just been so interested in this because the truth of the matter is people will sit there and say they don't like celebrities, they don't like influencers, they don't this, that, and the third, but we'll sit there and kiki and, twinkle their feet and get all excited when they find out their favorite celebrity, founder, influencer, iconic character, whatever, has been tapped by quote unquote one of their, favorite beauty brands to do a campaign or to be an ambassador or to X, Y, and Z. And I just thought it was so interesting because so many people will sit there and say, oh, celebrities are dead. We're tired of them. They're out of touch. But when they are in your campaign, when they are, in a fun, cute, quote unquote, relatable, very overly scripted, very, intentional campaign that probably took months to put together for this, social media advert or, XY or this social series, or we're putting the series on YouTube or we're maybe doing a couple billboards. Everybody and their mom is super excited about it. And it makes me think about how still, if you are a brand and you are trying to ask yourself, how do we get people talking? How do we get eyes on us? Finding somebody that you can tap that has influence, which I'm not even necessarily saying this is specific to a celebrity, but I mean, hey, if you can get a celebrity or someone of some sort of notoriety, that would probably be to your betterment. But at the same time, if you can find somebody that has notoriety, who's notable, who you're saying to yourself, if they are in the zeitgeist of our brand, if they come into our world and we know our community. And this also goes back to brands understanding who their community is and who their audience is. Cause it's of course, people who are into Charlotte Tilbury, into the decadence, into the Hollywood glamour and X, Y, and Z are going to love Kim Cattrell. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to love Kim Cattrell, who has become, honestly, this like iconic, staple, especially with Sex and the City, being popular again and having a resurgence. And also people like Brenda Song, who's also having a resurgence because, again, she's out here, she's in the new Netflix show with Kate Hudson, and she's getting back into the zeitgeist of the world, and we love her because of Disney Channel. And maybe it's nostalgia. I guess that's what it is. I think we're all just like really, 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 really like obsessed with nostalgia. And so I think if you can get those nostalgic moments, / if you can find the right ambassadors, and again, I'm not even necessarily saying celebrity. I mean, if you can get it, great. But at the end of the day, if you can find people who have notoriety and people who you genuinely feel like can be the best representation from your brand to now go out there in the world and be your ambassador, I say invest and go for it, because you'd be surprised. Like, I honestly think a lot of the times people think to themselves, oh, we don't need a celebrity or we don't need this or whatever. But sometimes that could be it, especially if you know your audience and you know your community and you know that your community might love this said person or might be interested in this person's life story or a different side of them, and you can bring that out in some way, shape, or form. I think it would be to your betterment to figure out how to do that. Like, going back to Topicals, like Topicals has been really, really good at being able to like tap very notable models, influencers, musicians that are super dope. Again, quickly going back to the live Olamide did, where she talked about how they were relaunching Faded, which is probably one of their most popular products. And they came out with an unscented version, and they did this kind of like belly inspired, short film. And what was super dope was that she said, I wanted Mona Leo in it, which is, she's an incredible rapper. I love Mona Leo. I think she's just great, and she's been great. And so it was really dope because in the essence of rap music and in the essence of where the industry is, like, Mona Leo is an independent artist. She is not, she's had hits, obviously, but she's not a major label mainstream artist. It's like kind of one of those things, if you know, and if you like rap and you like women and whatnot, like, you're going to be in that world. But what I thought was really cool is that she said I needed her in it because she's a star. And I think there's something to founders and CEOs and tastemakers being in your business that understand how to pick stars before they get to that level. You know what I mean? So that you as a brand can sit there and say, we recognize that this person had it and they had the vibe and they fit our aesthetic and we wanted to give them an opportunity. And if anything, and now, the amplification of you amplifying them and you being the brand that you are, that could take you to a whole nother level. And if anything, it shows your community that you're, again, paying attention and are willing to tap people who are out here just doing what it is that they do. And again, I thought it was super smart. I thought it was great seeing these brands, in a sense, kind of tap into nostalgia, but also are tapping into people who have kind of this beloved energy about them, like Brenda Song, Kim Cattrell, and Shay Mitchell. Like, these are all individuals who we've seen on screen. These are all individuals who we know are dope people. Shay has bays, and we know she is such an involved founder. Like, we see so many things, about these individuals and people. And I think when we get to see a different side of them, it's actually really interesting and really cool. And if you're a brand who can figure out how to bring those individuals in, I think that's really exciting. Like, off the back of, even I talked about this a while ago, which was like nude sticks tapping like Glamzilla, tapping Sophia Richie, Hilary Duff, like all these people to kind of be a part of their brand and business and do these collections with them and show their community that, we see you. I think if anything, this is a really smart move that you can make. And if anything, it shows at the end of the day that you're actually paying attention. You know what I mean? And it's not even only just about selling products and putting up product photos and whatever. It's about showing you that we understand. You know what I mean? And I think as a consumer, again, the consumers today are so much smarter. They're so much aware. They'll clock it before, you even put it down. And I think if you can be at the helm of that and kind of scope out that talent or tap that right person for your brand, it could be the difference between you being like here today and then, being on the moon tomorrow. So just something really interesting that I wanted to tap. And again, shout out to People, Brands, and Things for just being such a dope account. And I'm always loving anything that they post because, again, there's certain things that I don't necessarily always see. But I also, I love it. And it's just simple. Like, it's just a white backdrop, 3 images, maybe a carousel or 2, and they just tell you what the news is. It's great. I love it. Last but not least, I wanted to quickly just actually follow up with a topic that I actually talked about a few podcasts ago, and it's all about Glossier losing their unicorn status. And this is an article from TechCrunch. So I talked about Glossier potentially filing for bankruptcy or nearing towards bankruptcy a couple episodes ago because, again, I've talked about Glossier in the past. It feels as if since Emily Weiss has left the company, things in the company are just not the same. Like, something about the aura of the company is different. And, I think they've been trying to kind of throw things at the wall and see what sticks. And so, again, I don't know if it's been the most successful. I mean, they've had really, interesting partnerships that on the outside have looked incredibly successful, like the partnership with the WNBA and, really doing things as well that are different from their normal playbook. But TechCrunch is saying that Glossier is reportedly fundraising again, aiming to raise $100 million with a valuation south of $1 billion. Glossier is still one of the more popular beauty brands, was last valued at $1.8 billion nearly 4 years ago, but has struggled with profitability and scale these past few years. Glossier did not immediately respond to our request for comment. Sources who spoke to Puck stressed that Glossier doesn't necessarily need the money, but had a desire for new consumer-oriented investors and a refreshed board. That and the direct-to-consumer market is much different than when it stuck its valuation all these years ago, back when investors were still throwing money at the walls. Right now, investors in the brand include everyone from Forerunner to Sequoia, Thrive, Index, and this is per Puck and PitchBook. So I just quickly wanted to talk about this because clearly this is the episode where we talk business and we get into what the beauty industry is really about at the end of the day. Like, I love the beauty industry for the creativity and the fun, but beauty in the last 5 years, maybe even 10 years, have been all about just big business and big moves. And what I've noticed, again, like I've said, since Emily Weiss has kind of left the company, Glossier has really just trying to been figuring out how to get back into the cultural zeitgeist. And who knows, millennial pink and them being this it girl brand and whatnot. Maybe that was just the 2010s, y'all. Maybe that was just 2010s up to 2015, 16, maybe 2018. But it's a wrap because today the girlies want things different and they want to kind of show up in ways that are not in this, and I'll say this because Glossier has always been like this, right? This very off-model duty, you kind of have to have perfect skin to use the products. And honestly, since then, so many brands have come out since then that have kind of adopted a similar look and feel, like a Summer Fridays, like a Say, like a Ilia, like a Merit. And all of these brands have existed and are killing it, right, in their own way. But I think what's really interesting is that Glossier has kind of diverted a little bit from what their normal essence of the brand was. And like I said, when Emily Weiss stepped down, it seems, and this is what the confirmation is here, is that they're struggling with profitability and scale. And especially these past years. And again, like I said, when Emily Weiss left the company, which was, past few years ago. So it's one of those things where, I don't know, Glossier to me, I've purchased maybe a couple products from Glossier. I think I purchased a brow product from them. But it's never been a brand to me that has screamed inclusivity and innovation and whatnot. It was really a brand for a particular time. And I think they've struggled with figuring out how we're going to be the brand in 2025. And they've done really trendy things. They did the whole black cherry line. And that was very trendy because everyone was doing black cherry things. And there was a specific essence there, but I don't know. It just seems like they're just trying to jump on trends or trying to do quote unquote what they think is cool, but have kind of lost the essence of what the brand is. And I think people still love the brand, but I remember the whole gloss, I believe it's the bomb.com reformulation and people not being happy about that. I think again, they've taken away certain things from the brand like Glossier Play, which a lot of people were really excited about because again, it was a detour from their normal millennial pink off-model duty look. And I don't know, it seems that they can't kind of find their footing in today's beauty industry, which has today to me feels much more like indie brands are killing it. Indie brands are really the ones that are innovative and dope and exciting and are willing to take the risks. And, you go through this, right? When you sell your brand and you have investors and you have stakeholders and, they, at the end of the day, care about money, you got to make moves that you think are going to make money. And it seems like, I don't know. It just seems like, if anything, if the brand does enter bankruptcy, if something ends up happening to Glossier, am I going to sit here and say that, the beauty industry is going to be shook? Yes. But there are so many brands that exist that are doing what Glossier is doing, but better, if I'm being honest, because those brands are willing to take risk. And I find a lot of those brands today that I just mentioned, the Merritts, the Ilias, the Summer Fridays, the Says, like, they have like other things about the brand that are interesting, right? Like Summer Fridays will always have the jet lag mask. Like they came out with the jet lag eye masks and like everybody loved it, right? But that's like their home base. And I think that's really exciting. And people have been really interested to see what Summer Fridays has come up with since then and, whatnot. The founder Lainey is all about sustainability. And I just saw that they launched like vintage, clothing, you know what I mean? Because she really cares about sustainability and like, actually, being a brand that talks the talk and walks the walk. So it's like, I think today, beauty founders and beauty brands, like you can't just sell products. Like you really have to have a story. You really have to have something that people can really latch onto. And I also think you can't just be trendy all the time. Like, where's the innovation? Like, I talk about this all the time, how I just feel like the beauty industry has a lack of innovation because everybody is just doing the exact same thing. Like, it was like last year when everybody came out with blush, or like, a year before that and everyone was coming out with lip gloss. Like everybody's doing the exact same thing. And I get it. Most of these brands are in Sephora, they're in Ulta, they're in these retailers that will give them a runway and say, hey, this is what's going to be the hot item for 2025 or 2026 or whatever. You've got to kind of follow that route. But to me, I just find when it's just so obvious, the brands that are trying to do things to capitalize on moments versus the brands that are doing things differently and are willing to experiment. And I find, again, a lot of the times the indie brands who maybe don't necessarily have investors. And I'm not saying that the brands that I mentioned don't, because quote unquote Summer Fridays has, they have investors. I'm pretty sure Say does. I'm pretty sure a lot of these brands, I believe Ilia was acquired by Clarins. So all these brands have, quote unquote investors and stakeholders that they have to appease by. But what I'm finding is, if the founder has been a very focal point of the brand and the business and they're not there anymore, going back to what I said about Taraji and TPH, like there's an essence there that's lost, you know what I mean? And it feels like we're just trying to do things to make money, and that's not always the best move in the end, you know what I mean? And so I don't know, especially with, like I said, the tariffs and the industry and brands closing down and retailers, saying, hey, we're not going to let in any more brands because we got to sell what's on the shelves. Like, it's going to be a really interesting 2025 and future of the beauty industry. I mean, I wish everybody the best in how they're going to be able to evolve and do things differently. But, business moves are being made and other business moves are not. And brands are just trying to figure out how we can kind of stay afloat. And again, I commend all founders and everybody who are in this space, because owning a brand is no joke, but specifically owning a beauty brand is 1,000% no joke, because at the end of the day, you still have to come up with new launches. You have to find a way to, bring new customers in, right? Appease your current customers. And so it's going to be a sticky time, but at the end of the day, we've been through this, you know what I mean? And if you're a founder who is willing to weather the storm, if you are aware of moves that are being made from certain brands and business, and then also like as a consumer, like if you're saying to yourself like, wow, this brand really spoke to me and now they don't, like, again, the consumers are being vocal and saying, we're not going to support these brands. Or for example, the Target boycott, you know what I mean? Brands saying, hey, we're just not going to shop at this retailer because they're rolling back their DEI, and it feels like a slap in the face. And so I don't know, the industry kind of feels like a little bit scary / I'm hoping this is an opportunity for people to say to themselves, okay, we've got to do things differently because the old playbook doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like the old playbook of just kind of going with the flow and, the lipstick index and like the girls are doing their manicures at home. You know what I mean? Like, or they're only purchasing products during the Sephora sale. that's like, here. So it's like, it's one of those things where people are being very strategic about their money and how they're moving. And they don't just want to purchase from brands that are just doing things because they're trendy, right? Like people want to feel like they're a part of these brands today. And so it can be tough sometimes when you're a bigger brand and, you're trying to, again, appease private equities, and your, stakeholders and shareholders and investors and whatnot. But, you gotta, if anything, I don't know, maybe Emily Weiss has to come back. I'll just throw that out there. I don't know if she ever will, but like, it's one of those things where it's like, maybe we bring her back to really bring home the brand and tell that story. And maybe, let's stop trying to do everything that's trendy because it's just not working. So with all that being said, y'all, thank you so much for today's episode of What's New in Beauty. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave me a review on Apple Podcasts and of course on Spotify. I believe there's also notes on Spotify as well too. So if you have any thoughts or if you want to get into anything that I talked about on today's episode, please do. I'm always here to chat more, to yap more, to get into it. But with all that being said, y'all, thank you so much for joining me for another episode, and I'll catch you in the next one.